Those good memories touch the heart of the nation when Nova Perez became the first Indigenous athlete to win an Olympic gold medal at the 1996 Atlanta Games as part of the women's hockey team. Just a year later, Nova switched to athletics and found success at the 1998 Commonwealth Games, winning gold in both the 200-metre sprint and the 100-metre relay.
People say, how did you do that? And I said, well, I was physically gifted. I had a fantastic upbringing. My mother, you know, she lived in a mission for 8 years. She came out, and I call my mum my rock. She's my Uluru, you know, she's set an amazing foundation about, you know, getting off your backside and having a go in life.
With the support of the people of the Northern Territory, I want her to be the first Aboriginal woman to sit in the Federal Parliament.
I stand here before you all today not only as Australian, but as a proud Aboriginal woman.
If successful, Nova will become Labor's first Indigenous representative in federal parliament.
I believe Nova's selection is a matter of national significance.
I say this to all my Indigenous brothers and sisters and to all people. Within every one of us lies the ability to reach deep inside ourselves and draw upon our heritage, inherited strength that our ancestors have given us. There lies a spirit that needs to be awakened. Whilst I'm obviously very proud of my Aboriginal heritage, I want to make it clear that I do not consider myself an expert when it comes to finding solutions for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's particular predicaments. For too long, we've all heard too many people say they have the answers for Aboriginal Australians and claim the moral high ground. If the answers were easily provided and the questions are posed, we simply would not have a problem. In fact, the answers are difficult and complex, but they do not lie in absolute positions of simplified slogans. Just delivering another government program would not end the appalling rates of youth suicide in our communities, for example. These are uncomfortable issues, but they must be confronted. I've been fortunate enough to achieve at the Olympic levels of sport and hockey. In sport of hockey and athletics, I've experienced the total joy of winning gold medals for my country. But I will swap all of that in a heartbeat. I will forego any number of medals to see Aboriginal Australians be free, healthy and participating fully in all that our great country has to offer. It is my dream to see kids from Santa Teresa, from Goombalanya and Kalkarinji and the Tiwi Islands, all with the same opportunity as kids from eastern suburbs of Sydney. That is one of the reasons I'm a fierce advocate for Aboriginal people being taught to be able to read and write English. We cannot and should not be denied these basic tools. Of course, we should never be forced to renounce our culture. Our beliefs sustain our spirits, they nourish us, but at some levels they restrain us too. That is the collision point that confronts Aboriginal people. I make the simple point that in spite of difficulties like those I've described, we are seeing some positive change in health. Ma bobo.
Nova's also working hard to make a difference to the lives of young Aboriginal girls from remote communities. Just over a year ago, she set up the Nova Perez Girls Academy. While the academy plays a vital role in educating close to 80 girls, it also plays an important role in Nova's future plans.
And, you know, that's one of the big reasons why I said yes, is because I've been part of this at a national level. I've seen the high level of dysfunction in Aboriginal communities. I've seen suicides go up. I've seen fetal alcohol syndrome go up. I've seen all of it firsthand, and it hit me for six. So much so that I thought, okay, what do I do about this? The only thing you can do is you be part of the solution. You take the small steps to make the big progression. But I was doing that at a small level. I'm doing that here at this school. You're educating young girls about, you know, the investment in education. How do they become a proud Indigenous person in 2013?
It might help if we non-Aboriginal Australians imagined ourselves dispossessed of land we had lived on for 50,000 years and then imagined ourselves told that it had never been ours. Imagine if non-Aboriginal Australians had served their country in peace and war and were then ignored in history books. Imagine if our feats on the sporting fields had inspired admiration and patriotism and yet did nothing to diminish prejudice. Imagine if our spiritual life was denied and ridiculed. Imagine if we had suffered the injustice and then were blamed for it. It seems to me, if we can imagine the injustice, we can imagine the opposite, and we can have justice. The starting point might be to recognise that the problem starts with us, the non-Aboriginal Australians. It begins, I think, with an act of recognition. Recognition that it was we who did the dispossessing. We took the traditional lands and smashed the traditional way of life. We brought the diseases and the alcohol. We committed the murders. We took the children from their mothers. We practiced discrimination and exclusion. It was our ignorance and our prejudice and our failure to imagine that these things could be done to us. With some noble exceptions, we failed to make the most basic human response and enter into their hearts and minds. We failed to ask, how would I feel if this was done to me? Down the years, there's been no shortage of guilt, but it has not produced the response we need. Guilt, I think we've all learned, is not a very constructive emotion. I think what we need to do is to open our hearts a bit, all of us. So we are beginning to more generally appreciate the depth and the diversity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures. From their music and art and dance, we're beginning to recognise how much richer our national life and identity will be for the participation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We're beginning to learn that the Indigenous people have known for many thousands of years how to live with our physical environment. Ever so gradually, we're learning to see Australia through Aboriginal eyes, beginning to recognise the wisdom contained in their epic story. I said we non-Indigenous Australians should try to imagine the Aboriginal view. It can't be too hard. Someone imagined this event today and it's now a reality and a great reason for hope. But there's one thing today we cannot imagine. We cannot imagine that the descendants of people whose genius and resilience maintained a culture here through 50,000 years or more, through cataclysmic changes to the climate and the environment, and who then survived 2 centuries of dispossession and abuse, will be denied their place in the modern Australian nations. We can't imagine that. We cannot imagine that we'll fail. And with the spirit that is here today, I'm confident that we won't fail. I'm confident we will succeed in this decade. Thank you very much for listening to me.